Well, first off, I appreciate that introduction. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, and I will say, just judging by some of these front tables up here, I feel kind of like I'm at home. I'm used to talking to a Baptist crowd, so I don't mind reaching out to the people in the back, all right? But I tell you what, I will say, I was thinking about some things whenever I was planning to come up here and visit with this group of peanut growers from all over the southeastern United States. I was thinking about peanut-related stories. I was even thinking about just experiences back home growing up on our family's farm, as was just mentioned in that introduction. And it made me think of a question, real quick. You don't have to say it out loud, you can if you want to, but in your little hometown, in your area where you're farming, where is it nowadays that all the locals go and meet up for breakfast? Do we have anybody from Southeast Alabama, maybe Hartford, Geneva area? If you're here, I recognize that's probably the Hardys, I think. If you're in South Georgia, I imagine it's probably a toss-up between the Waffle House or the Huddle House. For us, growing up, we all sort of gathered at this place called the Village. And no, it's not the Village Inn. We didn't get pies or anything. This was the Village Restaurant, a little greasy spoon diner where everybody would show up, cafeteria-style tables. The special that you usually got in the morning was called the pig. 1 egg, bacon, grits, piece of toast, burnt coffee. Usually had to finish drinking the cup of coffee, chew the grounds at the end. And that picture right there, that is me with my granddad. G.C. Sewell, he went by Buddy. Now, Bud and I, we often would go, especially as he got older, we'd go in the morning, we'd grab breakfast, and we'd visit with all the locals. And over time, the Village Restaurant ended up shutting down, unfortunately, and we had to find a new spot to go. I mentioned I was thinking about old stories as I was getting ready to come to this event. And I think about that because we'd sit up there and we'd gab with all sorts of fruit and vegetable growers from Plant City. And something that I find so funny is as I'm talking to a group of peanut growers right now, something that they struggled to do. They could grow strawberries, they could grow vegetables and almost anything else. They struggled to grow peanuts, and they tried. They tried because everybody wanted to have their very own peanut boil. And they figured out real quick it was a whole lot easier just to go and buy them peanuts from somebody who knew how to do it. I see you laughing. You know it. But something else I thought of too was on this theme of peanuts. I remember the older and older my granddaddy got, he would still want to go out. He would want to go get lunch, get dinner, get breakfast, what have you. And I remember one day, and the more and more older he got, he struggled to get around. He had a little bit of a shuffle to him. You can call it like a Plant City lean. If you look up here, it was kind of like this. He had to hike his old dungarees up. They were falling down. You could barely fit a quarter probably between the ground and the bottom of his boots. He just shuffled along. He'd struggle to get in his truck. He really shouldn't have been driving. He couldn't even hardly turn his neck. Most of the time he'd throw his old pickup truck in reverse and he'd just go till he heard a crunch. That's what he did. But he told me one day, he said, I'm going to go uptown, I'm going to get me a Sunday. And why in the world he sounded like he was from Sling Blade, I don't know. But he said, I'm going to go up there to town, I'm going to get me a Sunday. I asked him about it later on. He said he loaded up in his truck, he struggled to climb in, he drove all the way to the DQ, the Dairy Queen in town, went in there and he got out, he rolled himself out of his truck, he shuffled on up there to the door, he opened up the door, went in there, and the young lady that was working the register said, what do you have? And he said, I'd like me one of them Sundays. She said, vanilla or chocolate? He said, I'll take vanilla. He said, you want sprinkles? Sure, I'll have sprinkles. You want fudge? Yes, ma'am, I'll have fudge. She said, crushed nuts? He said, no, ma'am, it's just a bad back. That was my grandpa. So if I get kicked out of here for that one, I'm sorry about that, but that was him, that was Bud. But I share that story because I'm laughing thinking about coming to this peanut conference, especially with this theme that I think is so fitting, that it's a circus in farming, right? And on that note, aren't we all kind of a little bit nuts sometimes for farming? We do it because we love it. We absolutely love it. I heard somebody a while back just say, if we didn't love it, there are so many things about the farming and ranching world that just would not make sense. It would be hard to pencil it out. And sometimes even when we do love it, it's hard to pencil out. Now our family, we started advocating through the Mind Your Melon Foundation because we know how difficult it can be. We do. And we talk about something that I'm so happy to see that it's been put on your agenda. You heard about it this morning. I get to share some stories and some personal testimony on it now. But this mental health topic can be so odd to a lot of people. It's uncomfortable. I've said before that a lot of times it feels almost like having to have the birds and the bees talk. You know you don't want to have that talk, but we also realize in all reality, it's a very important conversation to have. What we've gathered is that in a world where we want things to be so simple, so straightforward, fit into neat little boxes, mental health looks about like this roadmap up here that curves all over the place. I want to be very clear and point out a misunderstanding that a lot of times we run into. People hear mental health and they automatically think mental illness. Current U.S. statistics show that 1 out of every 4 or 5 people, so 20 to 25% of everybody, will deal with a mental illness. At Mind Your Melon, we say 100% of us deal with mental health because we're all dealing with something. We just may not all be dealing with the same thing. I heard it put really well one time when somebody said, in this world of farming, it's not necessarily that we're crazy. We just deal with some crazy circumstances. And I'm sure that just looking at some of those different stops along that map there, I like how the pointers followed them along too. There's probably some that resonate with you based on your family, your friends, your community, what you've observed. And I know that that's the case for my family as well, and that's part of why I'm here and going to talk with you today, if I can. Oh no. Now, during that introduction, Taylor so eloquently mentioned that I came from a 5th-generation fruit and vegetable operation in Plant City, Florida. That is true. So my brother and I are 5th generation, Plant City, winter strawberry capital of the world, but we also double crop with some mixed vegetables as well. But strawberries are for sure the mainstay at our family operation. And in those pictures right there, I share those, and there's a sense of pride and legacy that comes with them. And I bet you so many other families in this room right now have similar stories and similar pictures. Left-hand side, Bud, who was sitting at the breakfast table with me on that picture earlier, he's over there squatted down on the far left side, and to the right of him, that's 2nd generation. That's GC Senior. And then on the right-hand side, that picture there, that was from the early 90s. That's my older brother on the left. I'm the little bald-headed baby. Not a whole lot has changed, right? I mean, I got a beard, but other than that, I'm small and bald. And my dad squatted down holding me. That's Marty, Mark, and me, Marshall. That 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generations all wrapped up in that picture right there. There's so much pride that comes with our farming stories and our farming legacy. And like I said, we got to love it. We got to be passionate about it to do what we do so often. We do. But I am to the point that I do believe that with all of this tradition, with all this legacy and heritage that we are so proud of, it also comes with an immense amount of pressure. I can still to this day remember growing up always hearing, well, I sure wouldn't want to be the one to lose my granddaddy's farm or my daddy's farm. I sure wouldn't want to be the one that had to sell out or do this or do that. Those are realities that we live with, because what we've learned in this Mind Your Melon space is on top of day-to-day stresses that so many of us deal with, trying to run a business, trying to be a good family member, trying to live a purposeful life, we are constantly dealing with so much uncertainty, so much risk, and so much challenge. That's every day for us. And I know that firsthand because I will share with you some experiences from our own family farm. If you're like me, you're probably saying, listen, you did not mention in any of that background that you are a psychologist or a clinician or anything else. What background do you have to be talking to us? Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I do not have a PhD. Closest thing I got to a PhD is a set of post hole diggers in the back of my pickup truck. No doctor, not a veterinarian either. But I will tell you what we've been through. The specific story I'm going to share with you is from when I was in high school. I was a senior, and we were going into our fall crop, getting ground ready for our strawberry season that year. And I bet this will resonate with so many people, because you know that feeling. It's almost like going to the casino and putting all your chips out on the table. The money's out. The money's out. It's invested. It's sunk at this point. You're getting ready for your upcoming crop. But we were getting ready for strawberry season, had all of our transplants in the ground. That's how we have to do strawberries. We'd bring strawberry transplants from up north, put them in the ground. We'd live them in, and then we'd watch and we'd wait. And typically around Thanksgiving or so, we'd try to start scrapping through our first berries. We'd harvest them all the way till early spring. We had everything in the ground, and we had not harvested nary a berry. And all of a sudden, we got this industry-wide update from IFAS, University of Florida Extension. They're the gurus in terms of strawberry research in the state of Florida, and they let us know that there was a disease outbreak all through the Florida strawberry industry, that one of the nurseries that provided a significant portion of the plants for the area had unknowingly sent down what we call dirty plants. Dirty plants all throughout our county, all throughout our region. And we had been living them in, watching them up to this point. And one day, We showed up to that farm and acre after acre was wilting down and dying. It was anthracnose. Some of you know that disease. Shuts down the plants. Just looking out across the field at everything wilting down and dying, and at least within the strawberry market at that particular time, there's no such thing as safety net. There's no federal crop insurance program or anything like that. There's no Band-Aids to try and put on it. What do? That's a punch in the gut feeling to sit there and look at that, trying to figure out what in the world to do when you're not even going to make it to the first harvest. That was our reality. And I remember it very clearly because I know that on Sunday, November 18th, I woke up. We were dealing with some issues at the farm and also with our cow pasture down the road. We had a broke down piece of equipment. And I woke up on Sunday morning. I was ready to pull on my work clothes, put on my work boots, and I was going to go over there with my dad, and I was going to work on a piece of equipment, try and get it up and running again, and at least for a quick moment, hopefully get back to some semblance of normal. My dad said, you know what, I'd rather you go to church with your mama today. I can tend to that piece of equipment. I said, yes, sir, I'll do it. I went to church with my mom while my dad went to the farm to work on equipment. Somewhere during that hour-long sermon, couldn't tell you what the pastor talked about that particular day. Don't remember all the notes or anything like that, but I do know this, that somewhere during that hour-long window, my dad was over there working on that piece of equipment. And I don't know if he was thinking about bills that were coming in, checks that weren't going to be coming in. I don't know what the case may be, but instead of meeting us for lunch after church like we would normally do, my dad turned off his old trusty Nextel, the old beep beep. He dropped it in the center console of his truck. He drove an hour south to the far end of the county. Went to a farm that belonged to one of his lifelong industry role models, a mentor of his in the farming world. My dad drove all the way down there, pulled over to the side of the field, got out of the truck, and on November 18th of my senior year of high school, amidst all of this, my dad decided that the world no longer had a place for him in it. I don't share that story for any sort of sympathy or pity. I share it because in a world where so often we can say that this mental health topic is taboo, it's stigmatized, or some people even say, well, I don't even know if it's real. I tell you what, it's very real to our family. We've been through it, and we've seen it. And I will go ahead and tell you right now, it's not necessarily that my dad was crazy, but as I mentioned earlier, my dad was up against some crazy circumstances. There's more to the story, though, because so often you hear that portion, and after that, we forget to think about the fact that my mom and my brother and I were still there at a relatively young age trying to figure out how to get through this scenario, this crop failure, and then also grieve the loss of my dad. And that's why I just want to point out to everybody that this is a very real topic. I was going to go to some more slides, and I don't know if... Either way, I'll just share with all of you until we get that pulled up. I had a slide on there that it showed sort of a bar chart from red all the way to green. And I think that here we go. I think sometimes in this mental health space, if we talk about this topic, we always err on the red side, crisis. How do we intervene at the very last moment? How can we call a helpline? How can we seek therapy or find a counselor? What can we do? And what our family and what our foundation tries to get at is we know that there are all sorts of pressures in our day-to-day lives and in this industry. And if they are left unchecked over time, they will build and build and build. A really good friend of ours who is a clinician, he works primarily with law enforcement officers. He says this about like putting a rubber band on your wrist. You can pop it once or twice, and guess what? That's manageable. But if you do it over and over and over, it's like water torture. After a while, it gets to be unbearable. So what can we be doing in our lives while things are in the green or even things are in the yellow to try and make sure that things are manageable? So within our Mind Your Melon Foundation, we don't just focus on intervening at the time of a crisis. We're trying to talk to everybody and say, what do we need to be doing right now to put up safeguards, to build resilience? Now, I've learned a whole lot about the topic of resilience I think some of this has shifted a little bit, but you'll see watching bus drivers on there. Just by watching bus drivers, we've learned something about resilience. Sounds a little odd. I'll add more detail. Met an individual who was getting his degree up in Chicago. And at the time that he was getting his degree, he was actually working as a Chicago metropolitan area city bus driver. And something that he noticed was that was a highly stressful field, but some people did it better than others. He kept observing all of these different things and determined that he was going to go on and he was going to write papers, build out his thesis, and become a doctor and study this, what he referred to as resilience and hardiness. His name is Dr. Paul Bartone, and he actually later went on to work for U.S. military, and he was one of the individuals that's called in whenever they realized within the military world that we needed to be building more resilient troops, building stronger troops before they went overseas rather than solely focusing on waiting for people to come back and dealing with PTSD. Now, Dr. Bartone, and I'll move through these as quickly as I can just based on time, but so many of us have heard of resilience, ability to withstand pressure. A lot of times we hear about being able to bounce back. Dr. Bartone would say that if you looked at a pie chart that is resilience, over half of it would be hardiness. We've heard of that word probably. We've heard of hardiness zones for growing our crops. We hear of hardy varieties and things. But Dr. Bartone likes to point out that in finding a hardy person, it comes down to 3 C's, or these 3 qualities that are commitment, challenge, and control. I'll clip through these pretty quick, but those 3 C's right there. Commitment. I want all of you to think about this in your own lives, in your own operations, in your own families, in terms of building higher levels of resilience. What is it in your day-to-day life that gives you a sense of purpose, that makes you want to wake up and do it every single day? I'll go ahead and tell you right now, I've had to determine over the years that faith is one of our greatest foundations, at least for my personal life and for our family. That's something we can cling to even through the roughest of storms. On top of that, family, our passion for our family operation, our family business. So what is it for you that gives you that sense of commitment and sense of purpose? Because that's something that you can draw from whenever times are difficult, reminding yourself of that. But also, the way we view challenge. Dr. Bartone would say every single day is going to be full of challenges for us, but the most hardy and the most resilient people, they're able to flip it on its end and see opportunity. It's not just a hard time, but it's a time to learn and it's a time to grow. A lot of times that's easier said than done, but he does notice it as a difference in people who are considered hardy and resilient. And finally, control. This one is super interesting to me because I pushed back on Dr. Bartone a little bit when he got on this subject. He and I were talking, and he said, Marshall, it's all about how we view control. I said, Doc, you're talking to somebody who works in ag. We control little to nothing most of the time. We don't control the weather. We don't control the markets. We don't control regulation and policy or anything like that. And he said, well, then you're already looking at it through the wrong lens. He said, somebody who is practicing sense of control in terms of all this hardiness and resilience, he said, you aren't just looking at all the ways that you are out of control. You focus on the factors that you can control, and you remind yourself of that. It gives you power. It gives you autonomy. And sometimes, even just reminding yourself that the only things you do control are your reactions and the words you speak. And he said, but trying to remember what is in your sphere of control, that is one of the most powerful things that we can do. Again, moving kind of quickly on this, so I appreciate the patience with me, but another one that I have learned so much from is just an old fisherman from Southwest Florida, little town of Punta Gorda. This fella, he'd probably love it up here. Maybe not on this rough water right now, but he'd probably feel right at home out there, especially if he had his boat with him. But a fella by the name of Grant McDougall. I mentioned earlier, somebody that works in psychology and focuses on law enforcement, that is Dr. Grant. Dr. Grant has become a really, really good friend of mine over the years because I learned quickly through this advocacy work that there aren't a whole lot of people who are really studying and looking at this ag mental health stuff. You heard from some great ones earlier this morning. We're starting to see more and more work in this space, but I've had to look a lot to law enforcement, military, and other fields to try and figure out ways that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Dr. McDougall works specifically with law enforcement officers, and he goes all around the country working with agencies, especially after traumatic events, working with officers and people who don't necessarily want to talk about the things that they're dealing with. And I asked him one time, I said, Doc, A lot of these events we go to, people always ask, if you could give one piece of advice, what would it be? And he says, well, that's an impossible silver bullet question, but I'll tell you what. He said, I would ask them who their oh no people are. Oh no people are the people that you know you can turn to when you have an oh no moment. Oh no, something's wrong. Oh no, I need help. He said, if you don't have at least one or two people on speed dial that you can call no matter the situation, no matter the circumstances, that is a good place to start. So I would ask each and every one of you, in a world where I happen to think that a lot of times we've subcontracted out general peer support to all sorts of different avenues, who around you in your friends group, your family, your personal network, who's on your bench and who can you turn to? But on the flip side of that, part of being a villager is also supporting others. So how are you showing up for others? How are you helping one another? Are we taking the time to interact and actually get past surface level conversations, talk about difficult things? And to refer back to Dr. Grant, are we willing to be vulnerable? Because a lot of times that's not a word we're comfortable with. But we also know that in this life, so many of us are dealing with similar things, especially in agriculture. We just aren't necessarily talking about them. And lastly, one of the things that I want to share is there is always hope. Always. I remember right after my dad passed away, I noticed that my mom was doing something a little odd. Hadn't noticed her doing this before. I watched her, and early in the mornings she would go out on the back porch. And the way our house was situated growing up, you go out on the back porch and you could watch the sun come up. My mom was not necessarily a real early bird. Like, she was an early bird in the sense that maybe she would go down to the McDonald's and she'd get a sausage biscuit and a Coca-Cola, like that kind of early bird, but not necessarily going out just to sit and watch the sun come up. And I asked her one day, I said, what are you doing out there? She said, I got to where I like going out there and seeing it come up. And I said, well, why? And she said, I don't know, Marshall. She said, but at least when I go out there and I watch that sun come up, it's a little reminder to me that it's a brand new day and maybe that's a chance for things to get better. I would encourage each and every one of you to think of that and remember that. Every single day is a gift. That's why it's called the present. It's a chance for things to get better. But it is so flimsy sounding to just say to have hope. Just telling somebody to hold on, have hope. I wanted to dig into that just a little bit more. And something that I found interesting is, if any of you have ever heard, and maybe this is more for some of the corporate background folks, but there's this group called Gallup. They do these leadership surveys all over the world, interview all these people. Gallup did a survey of over 72,000 people from across 52 countries and asked them, what is one of the largest qualities you look for in a good leader? 56% of them brought up hope. They want somebody who is hopeful and can inspire hope. But how do we do that? Last one I'll share with you is this. There's another psychologist. He's from out in Oklahoma. He's passed away now, but Dr. C.R. Snyder. He dug into this even deeper and he said, well, hope sounds nice, but if you think about it at surface level, I may hope that my lotto numbers come up. I may hope that my hair will grow back naturally. That's not real hope. That's wishful thinking, right? Dr. Snyder says you can break hope down into this simple equation. Having goals, having pathways, and by pathways, he means having legitimate routes, plans to try to achieve those goals. An agency, which, to go back to Dr. Bartone earlier, is sense of control. Do I have a say-so in my actions and in my circumstances? I want all of you to think about that and remember that too, not only in your personal lives, but in your operations, with your family members, even with your teams that work with you. People in this world are looking for hope right now amidst all the challenges. And if we really want to break that down and parse it out, we can have goals, we can identify plans and ways to try and achieve those goals, and reminding ourselves and others that there are realistic actions. There are things we can do to achieve them. Folks, this is our QR code for the Mind Your Melon Foundation. That's my wife, Taylor, and I. We started on this journey just sharing testimony, trying to raise awareness on a dark topic that often lived in the shadows, trying to shed some light on it. And if you'd like to follow along, we've got a podcast where we bring people on trying to share stories, share resources. We've also got a website and social media pages where we try to share resources as well that we think might be helpful for people within the ag space or who just want to learn a little bit more about the challenges and what it takes to actually be involved in the agricultural space. I thank you all so much for allowing me the opportunity to be here today.